problem? Well, actually, I have a few okay. I guess it's safe to say that I kind of have issues, specifically with being alone, relationship wise. I always need someone or something to keep me occupied, to keep my mind from wandering. I'm afraid that if I'm alone with just me, I'll have to face the insecurity. So I do whatever I can to not be lonely. So you see, this problem has cost me. But I'm not going to get into it right now because I'm going to tell you all about what makes a great poet. So, what is poetry? Why does it matter? Poetry is defined as the literary work in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings and ideas by the use of distinctive style and rhythm. Nicole Ratheny, writer and educator, took the time to find out why poetry matters. Through her discovery and her interviews with Tracy K. Smith, which is an American poet, and research on Frederick Smoth, and another influential American poet, she found out that poetry matters because it can reveal truths and secrets that enable focus and problem solving. It can inspire creativity, joy, and act as a catalyst for overcoming fears. Poetry matters because it provides doors and mirrors into the lives and perspectives of others. We get to live experiences that will never have been had without poetry. So, there are over 15 types of poems, but for the sake of our time, I'm only going to talk about the most popular poems and ones that are mostly dearest to me and that I feel that we could all experience in our everyday lives. So first up, we have the rhyme poem. So that's typically what I write, and that was what I exhibited at the beginning of this presentation. Rhyme poems are just the words rhyme in the rhyme poetry, so it's defined pretty much by its name. So that's pretty easy. Next up, we have a lyric poetry. Lyric poetry is a broad category of poetry. It concerns feelings and emotions. So yeah, next up, we have an ode. An ode is a tribute to a subject. Next up, we have a soliloquy. A soliloquy is a monologue. This type of poem we've seen a lot, and I'm not sure if you guys are like familiar with Shakespeare, but Shakespeare is notorious for his soliloquies in his art and his plays and stuff like that. So that's a soliloquy. Next up, we have a haiku. A haiku is a three-line poetic which originates from Japan. The first line usually has 5 syllables, the second line has 7 syllables, and the third line has 5 syllables again. So this is just a popular type of poem. And then after that, we have a sonnet. So a sonnet is a 14-line poem, typically, but not exclusively, concerning the topic of love. Sonnets contain internal rhymes within their 14 lines. The exact rhyme scheme depends on the style of the sonnet. So those are the types of poems. So I'm going to show you some examples of these poems that I just told you about. So this is Maya Angelou. I'm not sure if you all are familiar, but Maya Angelou is a poet. She passed away a couple of years ago. But
you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll arise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like.
Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm going to only share a little bit of it, but that's Maya Angelou. And Maya Angelou, that's her poem "Still I Rise," and Maya Angelou typically writes lyric poems. So, like I said in like my last definition of lyric poetry refers to feelings and emotions. So that is Maya Angelou. Next up, I have Raina Biddy. And
Ships take 2. I know he forgot to say I love you too. I know he forgot to stay faithful. I know you forgot about the time you promised yourself you'd do better, but every time you try to leave, something keeps pulling you back, telling you this is the best you'll ever have in life.
Okay, so that's Raina Biddy. And that poem right there specifically is an ode, which I said it's like a tribute to a subject. So her tribute in that poem exactly was to women. So yeah, that's Rana Biddy. Okay. So now that we've talked about these different types of poems and seen examples of the different types of poets that have exhibited these various types, the question begins, what makes these poets great? So it's their passion, the feelings that they invoke. When the journalist Nicole Rothenway found out why poetry matters, it was discovered that it's the feelings and the emotion and the connectivity that you are able to get through poetry. So, what makes a great poet ultimately is the connection that they invoke in their audience. So, that's it. My name is Leah Hurd, and that's what makes a great poet.